Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin.
The iron gates of the Varelli estate stood like silent sentinels against the gray morning sky. Calla pressed the intercom button with steady fingers, her black dress pristine despite the 2-hour drive from Los Angeles. Beside her, Jules shifted nervously in the passenger seat of her Mercedes, his artist's hands trembling as he stared at their childhood home. "State your business," crackled a voice through the speaker. "Calla and Jules Varelli, we're here for our father's funeral." Static filled the air. Then Shayla's voice, dripping with false sweetness, cut through the silence. "You weren't invited. Your father's last days were peaceful without you." Jules flinched. His face went pale, and Calla watched him grip the door handle. She kept her expression neutral, though her knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. "Shayla, open the gate." Calla's voice carried no emotion. "The service is private. Family only. We are family." A bitter laugh echoed from the speaker. "Not anymore. Leo made his wishes clear. He didn't want to see either of you." Jules jerked forward. "That's not true. Dad would never." Calla placed a firm hand on his arm, silencing him. She leaned toward the intercom, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more threat than any shout. "Let her believe this is the peak of her power. The fall will hurt more." The intercom went dead. Jules stared at his sister. "Calla, what are we going to do? We can't miss Dad's funeral." She reversed the car with precise movements, her dark eyes fixed on the gates that had locked them out of their own home. "We're not missing anything, Jules. We're just changing our entrance." The Montecito Presbyterian Church overflowed with black-clad mourners. Calla and Jules slipped through the side entrance during the opening hymn, taking seats in the back row. Several heads turned, whispers rippling through the congregation. Shayla stood at the podium in a designer black suit, her blonde hair styled in perfect waves. She dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, though Calla noticed no actual tears. "Leonidas was a man of vision," Shayla's voice broke dramatically. "He built an empire from nothing, creating beauty where others saw only empty land. He was my husband, my protector, my everything." Jules gripped the pew in front of him. Calla sat motionless, studying her stepmother's performance. Leo left behind more than buildings and business deals. He left behind a legacy of love. Shayla's gaze swept the crowd, deliberately avoiding the back row. In his final weeks, he spoke often of his wishes for the future. He wanted peace. He wanted his estate to remain in loving hands. The congregation murmured their approval. Calla noticed several Montecito elite nodding, their faces solemn with manufactured grief. "It is my honor," Shayla continued, "to announce that Leo entrusted me with the family estate. The Varelli mansion will remain a beacon of elegance in our community." Gasps echoed through the church. Jules shot to his feet, but Calla pulled him back down. "His children," Shayla's voice carried clearly, "are well provided for in other ways. Leo established generous trust funds to ensure their independence." The words hit like ice water. Calla felt every eye in the church turned toward them. Some faces showed pity, others curiosity, a few barely concealed satisfaction at seeing the mighty Varelli children brought low. Shayla descended from the podium, her performance complete. As mourners began filing toward the exit, she approached their row with 2 large men in dark suits trailing behind her. "I'm sorry you chose to disrupt this sacred service," Shayla said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Security will escort you out." "You can't throw us out of our father's funeral," Jules protested, his voice cracking. "I can and I will. This is my church now, just like everything else was my husband's." Shayla's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and predatory underneath. The security guards stepped forward. Several prominent Montecito residents watched with fascination as drama unfolded in their usually pristine social circle. Calla rose slowly, her movements graceful and unhurried. She met Shayla's gaze directly, her voice carrying just far enough for the nearby observers to hear. "You really should have read the paperwork before throwing us out." Shayla's confidence faltered for a split second, then returned with vengeance. "Get them out of here." As the guards escorted them toward the exit, Calla heard whispers following in their wake. Some mourners seemed uncomfortable with the public spectacle, while others appeared entertained by the family drama. Outside the church, Jules turned to his sister, his face flushed with humiliation and rage. "How can you be so calm? She just stole everything from us in front of the entire town." Calla adjusted her purse strap and walked toward their car with measured steps. "She stole nothing, Jules. She just revealed her hand." "What does that mean?" Calla opened the driver's door and paused, looking back at the church where their father's funeral continued without them. "It means the real game hasn't started yet." The drive to Santa Barbara took 45 minutes. Calla navigated the winding coastal highway with the same steady precision she applied to everything else in her life. Jules stared out the window at the Pacific Ocean, his silence heavy with grief and confusion. "Where are we going?" he finally asked as Calla turned into an upscale business district. "Somewhere Dad prepared for us." She pulled into the parking lot of Coastal Trust Services, a discreet building nestled between law offices and financial firms. The receptionist recognized Calla immediately. "Ms. Varelli, we've been expecting you. Mr. Hensley is ready." David Hensley, their father's longtime attorney, greeted them in a conference room overlooking the harbor. His weathered face showed genuine sympathy as he shook their hands. "I'm sorry for your loss. Leo was a complicated man, but he loved you both deeply. Complicated enough to leave everything to his wife." Jules's bitterness leaked through his polite facade. Hensley exchanged a meaningful look with Calla. "That's why we're here. Your father left specific instructions for this meeting." He led them to a private elevator that descended to a basement level. The vault room was small but secure, with steel walls and a complex electronic lock system. "Leo established this 3 years ago," Hensley explained as he input a code. "He said if anything happened to him, I should bring Calla here immediately after the funeral." The vault door swung open, revealing a small room lined with safe deposit boxes and filing cabinets. On a central table sat a leather portfolio marked with Calla's name in her father's distinctive handwriting. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside, legal documents bore official seals and signatures. Jules leaned over her shoulder, reading along. "What is this?" he whispered. "The real deed," Calla said, her voice barely audible. "To the mansion." The document was clear. 3 years ago, Leonidas Varelli had transferred ownership of the family estate to an irrevocable trust with Calla as the sole beneficiary. Shayla's name appeared nowhere on the paperwork. Jules sank into a chair, but she said Dad left it to her. The will mentions personal property and some financial assets, Hensley explained. "The mansion was removed from the estate years ago. Shayla has no legal claim to it." More documents emerged from the portfolio. Bank statements showing Shayla's unauthorized use of estate funds. Medical records detailing Leo's declining mental state in his final months. Signed affidavits from household staff describing Shayla's increasing control over Leo's daily life. "He knew," Calla said, pieces clicking into place. "Dad knew what she was doing." At the bottom of the portfolio lay a sealed envelope marked for Calla only. She opened it with careful precision, revealing her father's final letter in his own handwriting. "Calla, if you're reading this, then Shayla has made her move. I've been watching her for months, documenting everything. She thinks I'm too weak to fight back, But she never understood that the strongest moves are made in silence. I couldn't protect you when you were young. I let her poison my mind against you. Convinced me you were cold and ungrateful. I know now that your distance was protection, not indifference. The mansion is yours. It always should have been. But more than that, you have the tools to destroy her completely. Use them wisely. You are always the fighter in this family. Fight for what's ours. Dad Calla's hands remained steady as she folded the letter, though something shifted in her expression. Jules watched his sister's face harden into something that reminded him uncomfortably of their father in his prime. She made one mistake, Calla said, her voice carrying a new edge. She underestimated me. What are we going to do? Jules asked. Calla gathered the documents with methodical precision, her movements sharp and decisive. When she looked up, her eyes held no warmth, no forgiveness, no mercy. This wasn't just inheritance, Jules. This was war. Arden McCrae's law office occupied the entire top floor of a steel and glass tower in downtown Santa Barbara. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the ocean, but Calla kept her back to the scenery as she spread documents across the conference table. "Tell me you're not surprised," Arden said, reviewing the trust papers with professional detachment. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her sharp green eyes missed nothing. "I'm not, but Jules is devastated." "Where is the golden boy?" "At his apartment in L.A. He needed time to process." Arden set down the deed and leaned back in her leather chair. They'd known each other since boarding school, where Arden's working-class background and razor-sharp intellect had made her an outsider among California's elite. Calla had been the only student to treat her as an equal rather than a charity case. "The paperwork is ironclad," Arden said. "We can file for immediate possession. Have her out by tomorrow." "No." Calla's response was immediate and final. "No." Too easy. Too quick. She humiliated us in front of the entire Montecito social circle. She kept me from seeing my father as he died. She sold my mother's jewelry to pay for her spa treatments. Arden's expression sharpened. Like Calla, she understood that revenge was a dish best served with strategic precision. "What did you have in mind?" "Complete destruction. Financial, social, legal. I want her to lose everything, the same way she made us feel we had lost everything." "And Carter?" Calla's jaw tightened at the mention of Shayla's brother, especially Carter. "He's been bleeding the estate dry for months." Eloise documented everything. As if summoned by her name, Calla's phone buzzed with a text from the loyal housekeeper. "She's throwing a party tonight. Selling your mother's artwork. Call me." Calla showed the message to Arden, who whistled low. "She's moving fast, probably trying to liquidate assets before anyone questions her authority." "Then we move faster." Calla stood, her movements fluid and purposeful. "Start the quiet paperwork. I want everything ready, but don't file yet. And dig into Carter's finances. All of them. What about Jules? Leave him out of this for now. When it's over, he'll understand." That evening, Calla drove through the familiar gates of her childhood home. The security system had been changed. Shayla's first mistake was underestimating Eloise's loyalty. The housekeeper had provided new codes within hours of Calla's request. She parked in the service area and entered through the kitchen, her footsteps silent on imported marble tiles. The mansion blazed with light and laughter. Through the grand windows, she could see Montecito elite mingling on the terrace, champagne glasses catching moonlight. "Miss Calla." Eloise emerged from the pantry, her weathered face creasing with relief. "I've been praying you'd come home." "This isn't home anymore, Eloise." "Not yet." "She's selling everything. Your mother's paintings, your father's war medals, even the silver your grandmother brought from Italy." Calla's expression didn't change, but something cold settled in her chest. "Show me." They moved through servant corridors Calla had explored as a child, avoiding the party guests who filled the main rooms. In Leo's study, easels displayed several of Calla's mother's original paintings, each marked with discreet price tags. $10,000 for the garden series, Eloise whispered. Your mother painted those the summer before she died. Calla studied the delicate watercolors, remembering her mother's hands guiding her brush, teaching a 6-year-old daughter to see beauty in simple things. The paintings were worth far more than Shayla's asking price, but their emotional value was incalculable. She doesn't know what she's destroying, Calla said. She knows. She just doesn't care. Through the study windows, they watched Shayla hold court on the terrace. She wore a white designer gown that cost more than most people's cars, diamonds glittering at her throat and wrists. Several potential buyers examined the artwork with the casual interest of people accustomed to acquiring beautiful things. Has she mentioned any financial troubles? Calla asked. Constantly. She screams at the accountant on the phone. Something about investment losses and cash flow problems. Carter's debts. He's been here every day since the funeral. They argue behind closed doors, but I hear pieces. Something about SEC investigations and frozen accounts. Calla absorbed this information with satisfaction. Carter's greed was accelerating their timeline perfectly. Eloise, I need you to do something for me. It might be risky. The older woman straightened her shoulders. Anything, Miss Calla. This family saved me when I had nothing. I won't let that woman destroy your father's legacy. Document everything. Every sale, every financial transaction, every conversation you can safely record. Can you do that without being caught? I've been invisible in this house for 20 years. She barely remembers I exist. Calla handed her a small recording device. Use this carefully. And Eloise, when this is over, I want you to stay, as head of household staff, with a proper salary and benefits. Tears gathered in the housekeeper's eyes. You're just like your father when he was young, before he got lost. I'm not lost, Eloise. I'm exactly where I need to be. The law office felt different at midnight. Arden's workspace was illuminated by desk lamps and computer screens, papers scattered across every surface. She'd been digging into Carter Winslow's finances for 6 hours, and what she'd found was worse than either of them had expected. He's not just stealing from the estate, Arden announced when Calla arrived with coffee and sandwiches. He's been running a Ponzi scheme using Leo's name and reputation. Calla set down the food and studied the financial documents spread across the table. How much? 12 million, maybe more. He's been convincing Leo's business associates to invest in fake development projects, then using new investor money to pay previous investors. And Shayla, either completely complicit or incredibly stupid. The estate has been covering Carter's losses for 18 months. Calla sank into a chair, processing the implications. No wonder she's desperate for cash. She's not just trying to maintain her lifestyle, she's trying to prevent a complete financial collapse. There's more. Arden pulled up bank records on her laptop. Look at these withdrawals from Leo's personal accounts in his final months. The records painted a devastating picture. Regular transfers to Carter's personal accounts, often for amounts exceeding $100,000. Medical bills that seemed inflated. Payments to caregivers who provided no legitimate services. She was bleeding him dry while he was dying, Calla said, her voice deadly calm. I've seen elder abuse cases before, but this is systematic financial destruction. She isolated him, controlled his access to information, and manipulated him into funding her brother's schemes. Calla's phone buzzed with a text from Jules. Can't sleep. Keep thinking about Dad's last months. Why didn't we fight harder to see him? Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. How could she explain to her gentle, idealistic brother that she had tried to fight, that she'd hired lawyers and private investigators, only to be outmaneuvered by forged documents and a father whose mind was being poisoned against his own children. We tried Jules. She was just better at manipulation than we were at recognizing it, that I should have done more. You were protecting yourself. That's what survivors do. The response came quickly. Is that what we are? Survivors! Calla stared at the question. Remembering the exact moment she'd understood what Shayla truly was. She'd been 25, fresh from business school, excited to work alongside her father in the family company. Shayla had been married to Leo for 3 years by then, playing the perfect wife and stepmother with Academy Award precision. The confrontation had happened in this very office building, in her father's old conference room. Calla had discovered financial discrepancies in several development projects, money being diverted to shell companies she couldn't trace. When she'd brought her concerns to Leo, Shayla had been there, her face a mask of hurt confusion. I don't understand why Calla would make such serious accusations without proof, Shayla had said, her voice trembling with perfectly manufactured emotion. I'm trying so hard to be a good mother to her, but she seems determined to resent me. Leo's face had hardened as he looked at his daughter. Calla, these are serious charges. Do you have evidence? The shell companies are registered to my brother's consulting firm, Shayla interrupted smoothly. Carter handles some of our personal investment diversification. It's completely legitimate, and I'm hurt that you would imply otherwise. Carter had appeared with documents explaining every transaction. Paperwork that looked authentic but felt wrong in ways Calla couldn't articulate. Her father had chosen to believe his wife over his daughter, and something essential had broken between them that day. You're being paranoid, Leo had said after Shayla left the room in tears. She's trying to build a relationship with you, and you're throwing accusations around like some kind of conspiracy theorist. Dad, the numbers don't add up. The numbers are fine, but your attitude isn't. You've been looking for reasons to dislike Shayla since I married her, and now you're letting that prejudice cloud your professional judgment. Calla had walked out of that meeting knowing she was alone. Over the following years, she'd watched Shayla's influence grow while her own relationship with her father deteriorated. Every attempt to reconnect was met with coolness. Every business suggestion filtered through Shayla's interpretation. Jules had been spared the worst of it. As the younger, more artistic son, he posed no threat to Shayla's control. He was allowed to maintain his relationship with their father, though Calla noticed even that becoming more distant as Leo's health declined. What are you thinking about? Arden asked, noting her friend's distant expression. The day I realized I was fighting a war I didn't know had started. And now. Calla's phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo from Eloise, Carter, and Shayla in heated conversation in Leo's study, apparently unaware they were being recorded. Now I know the rules. The anonymous email arrived in 12 inboxes simultaneously at 8 a.m. on Wednesday morning. Recipients included the editors of 3 society magazines, the financial reporter for the Santa Barbara News Press, and several prominent members of Montecito's charitable organizations. The subject line read, Financial irregularities at Varelli Estate, documents attached. Arden had crafted the message with surgical precision, providing just enough information to spark investigation without revealing their source. Bank statements showed unauthorized transfers from estate accounts, medical bills that couldn't be verified, investment documents for projects that existed only on paper. The beauty of anonymous tips, Arden explained as she and Calla monitored news websites from her office, is that people assume they're getting inside information. It makes them feel important and informed, and more likely to act on it. Exactly. I also sent copies to the SEC and the California Department of Elder Affairs. Government agencies love financial crime tips that come with documentation. By noon, Calla's phone was buzzing with calls from reporters seeking comment. She ignored them all, following Arden's strategic advice to remain invisible while the story developed momentum. Jules called at 2 p.m., his voice tight with anxiety. Calla, there are reporters outside my apartment building. They're asking questions about Dad and Shayla and missing money. What's happening? The truth is coming out. Did we do this? Calla paused, measuring her words carefully. Someone did. Someone who cares about Dad's legacy and doesn't want to see his life's work destroyed by thieves. The reporters are saying Shayla might face criminal charges. Carter, too. Would that upset you? The question hung in the air. Finally, Jules spoke, his voice smaller and younger than his 22 years. I keep thinking about the last time I saw Dad. He seemed confused, scared. He kept asking about you, wondering why you never visited. Shayla told him you were too busy with your own life to care about family. That wasn't true. I know that now. God, Calla, what did we let happen to him? We were children trying to fight adult predators with children's weapons. We didn't fail him, Jules. We just didn't understand how deep the rot went. That afternoon, Arden received a call from her contact at Coastal Trust Services. The estate's bank accounts have been frozen, pending investigation. Shayla tried to make a large withdrawal this morning and was denied. How large? $2.5 million. Enough to disappear permanently. Calla felt a cold satisfaction settle in her chest. She's panicking. Gets better. Carter was picked up for questioning an hour ago. Someone reported suspicious investment activity to the SSC. Anonymous tip? Anonymous tip. Amazing how often those come in when someone's operation starts unraveling. By evening, the story had exploded across Montecito's social media and email networks. The Varelli estate scandal dominated cocktail party conversations and charity luncheon gossip. Shayla's carefully constructed image as Leo's grieving widow crumbled under the weight of financial evidence and witness testimonials. Eloise called at 9 p.m. with an update that made Calla smile for the first time in days. She's firing staff left and right, the housekeeper reported, blaming everyone else for the investigation. 3 housekeepers quit today rather than work for someone under criminal investigation. And the house? Like a tomb. No parties, no visitors. Just Shayla pacing around screaming at lawyers on the phone. Has she mentioned me or Jules? Constantly. She's convinced you're behind everything. Keeps saying the Varelli children are trying to frame her. She's not wrong. Miss Calla, there's something else. I found documents in her bedroom safe. Financial papers she's trying to hide from investigators. Calla's pulse quickened. What kind of documents? I can't tell exactly, but they're related to Carter's business dealings. Account numbers, investment records, things like that. Can you photograph them safely? I think so. She's been drunk every night this week. Passes out by 10 o'clock. Do it, but be careful, Eloise. If she catches you. She won't. I've been invisible in this house for 20 years, remember? As Calla ended the call, Arden looked up from her laptop with satisfaction. The investment gala has been cancelled. What investment gala? The one Shayla was planning for this weekend. A last-ditch effort to raise capital and maintain her social standing. Apparently, the negative publicity made potential investors nervous. Calla absorbed this information with strategic calculation. She's running out of options. And time. The estate lawyers filed for a full financial audit this afternoon. Every transaction from the past 3 years will be examined under a microscope. How long before they find the trust documents? I estimate 72 hours. Maybe less if someone points them in the right direction. Calla stood and walked to the window, looking out over Santa Barbara's harbor lights. In the reflection, she could see Arden watching her with a mixture of admiration and concern. Are you ready for this? Arden asked quietly. I've been ready for 5 years. And Jules? Jules will understand when it's over. When he sees that justice isn't the same thing as revenge, but sometimes they travel together. Her phone buzzed with another text from Eloise. Documents photographed. "You need to see these tonight." Calla gathered her purse and coat, her movements sharp with purpose. "The final phase starts now." The investment gala invitation arrived by messenger on Friday morning, printed on cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing. Shayla had moved quickly to resurrect her canceled event, rebranding it as an intimate gathering for select investors and philanthropists. "She's desperate," Arden observed, studying the invitation's elegant script. "This is a Hail Mary play. Or a trap." Calla set down her coffee and reviewed the documents Eloise had photographed. Carter's hidden financial records painted an even darker picture than they'd imagined: shell companies, offshore accounts, and investment schemes that stretched back nearly a decade. "You think she knows we're coming?" "She suspects, but she also knows that hosting the event publicly gives her some protection. She can't cancel again without looking completely unstable." The gala was scheduled for Saturday evening at the Varelli mansion. According to Eloise, Shayla had managed to convince 30 potential investors to attend, including several new money tech entrepreneurs looking for real estate opportunities. "Fresh victims," Arden said grimly, "or witnesses to her final performance." Saturday morning brought unusual fog to Montecito, the marine layer shrouding the coastal estates in gray mist. Calla spent the day in careful preparation, selecting a black silk dress that projected authority without ostentation. Every detail mattered for what was about to unfold. Jules arrived at her apartment at 6 p.m., his face drawn with anxiety and determination. "I want to be there tonight," he announced without preamble. "Jules." "No, Calla. I've spent my whole life letting you protect me from unpleasant realities. Dad is dead, and that woman destroyed his final years. I need to see this through." She studied her brother's face, recognizing something new in his expression. The idealistic boy was growing into a man who understood that justice sometimes required steel beneath the silk. "It won't be pleasant. I know. She'll try to manipulate you, use your emotions against you." "I know that too." Calla nodded slowly. "Then we do this together." At 7:30 p.m., they drove through the gates of the Varelli estate. Valets directed them to the main entrance, where other guests were arriving in expensive cars. The mansion blazed with warm light, its marble facade glowing against the foggy evening. "It looks exactly the same," Jules said softly. "It is the same. That's the point." They entered through the grand foyer, where a string quartet played classical music beneath the crystal chandelier. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, while potential investors mingled with Montecito society figures. Shayla stood at the center of the main salon, resplendent in a silver gown that caught the light with every movement. She was holding court with a group of tech executives, her laugh carrying across the room with practiced charm. "She looks confident," Jules observed. "She's an actress playing her final scene." Arden arrived 10 minutes later, carrying a leather briefcase and wearing the dark suit of serious legal business. She moved through the crowd with professional purpose, drawing curious glances from guests who sensed something important was about to happen. "The documents are ready," she murmured to Calla as they passed near the grand staircase. "And the timing?" 8:15, during her presentation to the investors. Calla checked her watch. 8:05 p.m. Around them, guests were beginning to gather in the main salon for Shayla's pitch. Several potential investors had brought their own legal advisors, creating an atmosphere of serious financial discussion. "Ladies and gentlemen," Shayla's voice carried clearly through the room as she took position near the marble fireplace. "Thank you for joining me in this beautiful home to discuss an extraordinary opportunity." She gestured gracefully toward the oil paintings and antique furnishings that surrounded them. "The Varelli estate represents more than just prime real estate. It's a legacy of vision and excellence that spans 3 generations. Jules tensed beside Calla as Shayla began describing their father's business philosophy and real estate empire. Every word was technically accurate, but emotionally hollow, reducing Leo's life's work to marketing copy for potential investors. The development opportunities in this market are unprecedented, Shayla continued, her confidence growing as she held the room's attention. With the right partnerships, we can expand the Varelli brand throughout Southern California. At exactly 8:15 p.m., Arden moved to the center of the room, her briefcase open and legal documents in hand. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice cutting through Shayla's presentation like a blade. "I'm Arden McCrae, representing the legal ownership of this property." The room fell silent. Shayla's smile froze on her face as every guest turned to stare at the unexpected interruption. "I'm sorry, but this is a private event," Shayla began, with a very public problem. Arden pulled out a document bearing official seals and court stamps. "This is a court order recognizing the true ownership of the Varelli estate, along with the original deed placing this property in an irrevocable trust." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several investors moved closer, their legal instincts activated by the smell of potential fraud. "The beneficiary of that trust," Arden continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the room, "is Calla Varelli." All eyes turned to Calla as she stepped forward, her movements calm and controlled. She met Shayla's gaze directly, seeing fear and rage battling beneath the surface of her stepmother's composed facade. "This house belongs to me," Calla said, her voice clear and steady. "It always has. You were just squatting in a memory." The silence that followed was deafening. 30 potential investors and their lawyers watched as the evening's host was exposed as a fraud in her own living room. Shayla's composure finally cracked. "This is ridiculous. These people are trying to steal." "The only theft here," Arden interrupted, producing more documents, "was committed by you and your brother. We have evidence of systematic financial abuse, elder exploitation, and investment fraud totaling over $12 million. "That's not true." "Bank records don't lie, Mrs. Winslow." The name hit like a physical blow. Using Shayla's maiden name stripped away her claim to the Varelli legacy, reducing her to what she had always been, an outsider who had married into wealth and tried to steal it for herself. The guests began moving toward the exits with the practiced efficiency of wealthy people avoiding scandal. Investment deals evaporated as lawyers whispered urgently to their clients about potential legal exposure. Within 15 minutes, the grand salon had emptied, leaving only Calla, Jules, Arden, and Shayla standing amid the abandoned champagne glasses and untouched hors d'oeuvres. Shayla turned to Calla with desperation replacing her earlier confidence. "Please, we can work this out. I know we've had our differences, but surely we can reach some kind of arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" Calla's voice carried no warmth, no forgiveness. "I could stay on as estate manager, help maintain the property. I know this house better than anyone." "You know how to bleed it dry." "That's not the same thing." Shayla's facade crumbled further. "I did what I had to do. Carter was in trouble, and Leo wasn't thinking clearly. Someone had to make practical decisions. Someone had to steal from a dying man. I protected him. I kept him comfortable and safe. You kept me from seeing my father as he died." Calla's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than shouting. "You told him his own daughter didn't care enough to visit. You poisoned his final months with lies." Jules stepped forward, his gentle nature overridden by righteous anger. "She's right. The last time I saw Dad, he was confused and scared. He kept asking why Calla never came to see him. He was sick. His mind was going. His mind was fine until you started medicating him into compliance." Arden produced medical records from her briefcase. We have testimony from 3 nurses who witnessed you administering unauthorized sedatives and controlling his access to family and friends. Shayla's composure finally shattered completely. Tears streamed down her face, smearing her careful makeup into dark streaks. You don't understand the pressure I was under. Carter's investors were threatening him. The SEC was asking questions. I had to find money somewhere. So you stole it from your dying husband. I borrowed it. I was going to pay it back once Carter's projects started generating returns. Carter's projects were Ponzi schemes, Calla said flatly. There were never going to be any returns. The truth hit Shayla like a physical blow. She sank onto a leather couch, her silver gown pooling around her like liquid mercury. He promised me, she whispered. He said the investments were legitimate. He said we just needed time for the market to turn around. And you believed him because you wanted to believe him. Calla felt no satisfaction in watching her stepmother's world collapse. There was only cold justice in seeing the truth finally exposed. What happens now? Jules asked quietly. Now she faces the consequences of her choices. Arden pulled out her phone and checked messages. Carter was formally charged with investment fraud this afternoon. The SEC has frozen all his accounts and issued warrants for his arrest. Shayla looked up with horror. Arrested? But he's my brother. He's a criminal who used your husband's reputation to steal millions of dollars from innocent investors. Calla's voice remained steady and merciless. And you were his accomplice. I didn't know. You knew enough. You knew the money was disappearing. You knew the medical bills were fabricated. You knew you were keeping me away from my father, so I couldn't discover what you were doing. The front door opened, and Detective Martinez from the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department entered with 2 uniformed officers. Arden had clearly been coordinating their arrival. Mrs. Winslow, I'm Detective Martinez. I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of elder abuse, financial exploitation, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Shayla struggled to her feet, her legs unsteady beneath her. This is insane. I haven't done anything wrong. You have the right to remain silent. As the detective read Miranda rights, Shayla turned to Calla with one final, desperate plea. Please, I know we've had our problems, but I did love your father. In my own way, I tried to take care of him. Calla studied her stepmother's tear-stained face, searching for any trace of genuine remorse or understanding. She found only self-pity and desperate manipulation. You kept me from my father as he was dying, she said quietly. You let my brother sleep on a couch while you lived in luxury paid for with stolen money. You sold my mother's memory for wine money. Her voice never rose above a conversational tone, but each word hit with devastating precision. This isn't justice, Shayla. It's mercy that I'm not pressing additional charges. The officers led Shayla toward the door, her silver gown trailing behind her like a tarnished dream. At the threshold, she turned back one final time. You'll regret this, Calla. This house will never bring you happiness. It's built on too much pain. The pain was what you brought to it, Calla replied. When you're gone, it can heal. The mansion felt different with Shayla gone. Eloise emerged from the kitchen as the police cars disappeared down the driveway, her weathered face showing quiet satisfaction. It's over, she asked. It's over, Calla confirmed. Good. This house has been holding its breath for too long. Jules wandered through the main salon, touching familiar objects as if reassuring himself they were real. I can't believe she's actually gone. Believe it, Arden said, packing legal documents back into her briefcase. Between the elder abuse charges and the financial fraud evidence, she'll be in prison for several years. And Carter? Longer. The SEC takes investment fraud very seriously, especially when it involves elderly victims. Calla walked to the marble fireplace where family photos had once stood before Shayla replaced them with generic art. She remembered her mother arranging those pictures with loving precision, telling stories about each captured moment. "Eloise, I want you to stay on as head of household staff," she announced, "with a proper salary and full benefits. This house needs someone who understands its real history." The older woman's eyes filled with tears. "Miss Calla, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll help me restore what was lost." Over the following days, the full scope of Shayla and Carter's crimes emerged through police investigation and media coverage. The Ponzi scheme had victimized dozens of investors, many of them Leo's former business associates who had trusted the Varelli name. The elder abuse charges revealed a pattern of financial and emotional manipulation that had isolated Leo from his children and friends in his final months. Jules threw himself into the restoration process, using his artistic eye to help return the mansion to its original character. They found many of their mother's paintings and family heirlooms in storage, items Shayla had hidden away to make room for her own preferences. "It's like watching the house remember itself," Jules observed as they rehung their mother's garden watercolors in the main salon. 2 weeks after Shayla's arrest, Calla found the final letter from her father. Eloise discovered it in Leo's private safe, along with other documents that painted a clearer picture of his final months. "He hid it where she would never think to look," Eloise explained, handing over the sealed envelope. Calla opened it in her father's study, now restored to its original dignity with his awards and business memorabilia returned to their proper places. Jules sat beside her as she read their father's final words aloud. "Calla and Jules, if you're reading this, then my plan worked and you've reclaimed what belongs to our family. I know it seems like I abandoned you in my final years, but I was gathering evidence to protect you from what I suspected Shayla was doing, that I was weak when I should have been strong. I let her manipulate my feelings and turn me against my own children. I convinced myself that your distance was rejection rather than self-protection. The house is yours now, along with the business assets I managed to hide from Carter's schemes. But more importantly, you have each other. Don't let my mistakes divide you the way they divided us. Calla, you have your mother's strength and my strategic mind. Use both wisely. Jules, you have the artistic soul this family needs to remember that beauty matters as much as victory. I'm sorry I couldn't fight this battle while I was alive, but I made sure you would have the weapons to win it after I was gone. Take care of each other. Take care of the house. Take care of the legacy that your mother and I built together. All my love." Dad Jules wiped tears from his eyes as Calla folded the letter carefully. Outside the study windows, morning light streamed across the gardens their mother had designed decades earlier. "He did love us," Jules said quietly. "He always loved us. He just forgot how to show it. Do you forgive him?" Calla considered the question, feeling the weight of years of pain and misunderstanding. "I forgive him for being human, for making mistakes, for letting loneliness make him vulnerable to predators. And Shayla?" No. The word came without hesitation or doubt. She chose her path. She made calculated decisions to hurt innocent people for her own gain. That's not a mistake, it's a character flaw that can't be fixed. They sat in comfortable silence, surrounded by the restored memories of their family's history. The mansion felt peaceful for the first time in years, as if it too was healing from the trauma of Shayla's occupation. "What happens now?" Jules asked. Calla stood and walked to the windows overlooking the Pacific Ocean. In the distance, she could see other Montecito estates perched on their hillsides, bastions of wealth and privilege that had survived generations of family dramas. "Now we rebuild. The house, the business, the family name. We show people that the Varelli legacy means something more than money. And if someone tries to hurt us again..." Calla's reflection in the window showed a woman who had learned to fight wars she never wanted to engage in. Her expression held no warmth for future enemies, no forgiveness for those who might threaten what she had fought to protect. "Then they'll discover that I never forgive and I never forget. And next time, I won't wait 5 years to destroy them." Jules joined her at the window, and together they looked out over the estate that was finally, truly theirs. The morning sun burned away the last of the coastal fog, revealing a clear blue sky that stretched endlessly toward the horizon. "Welcome home," Jules said softly. "Welcome home," Calla agreed. For the first time since their father's death, she smiled without calculating the strategic value of the expression. It was simply the smile of a daughter who had come home.